Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to hashtag One With You, PLDT Enterprise Virtual Forum for the e-commerce industry. This is Jackie Ang from PLDT Enterprise, and I am honored to be your host this afternoon. To all those who are tuned in, we truly appreciate you taking time to be with us in this session. This afternoon, we will get to hear relevant data from our keynote speakers from Global Data and PLDT Enterprise. We are also very fortunate to have with us today a roster of distinguished panelists from brand leaders representing the e-commerce industry. They will be sharing key learnings and experiences, as well as best practices on how different companies cope and thrive against the negative impact of this crisis situation. Most importantly, this session aims to highlight the vital role of technology as we enter the future of work, or new normal. If you have any questions and suggestions, feel free to key them in through the chat box. Before we begin, here's a quick rundown of our reminders. For uninterrupted viewing experience, make sure you have a stable internet connection. Feel free to use any device to view the virtual event. For better appreciation, turn up the volume or use your headphones. And now, to officially start the program, our first presenter is a highly respected financial analyst based in Sydney, Australia, whose focus study areas include retail banking and wealth management market in the Asia-Pacific region. The team he leads focuses on identifying desirable consumer segments, growth niches, the mass affluent, and trends affecting the retail banking space in Asia-Pacific. He has highly been involved in large-scale benchmarking projects, and some of his recent topics of research included a close look at wealth management markets in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. Here to share with us latest data on the impact of coronavirus on the global pandemic landscape, with focus on Asia-Pacific region to help local industries thrive amid the crisis, let us all welcome on screen Global Data's Head of Content for Asia-Pacific, Mr. Andrew Haslip.
Thank you. Thanks for having me at the forum. So in this presentation, I'll be giving some context to this discussion, hopefully later on in the panel. So first up, looking at the infection rate. So I guess this presentation overall is going to be kind of looking at some good news, a lot of bad news, unfortunately, as we get into the economy a bit, and then some good news when we focus a bit more on the e-commerce market. So just what you're seeing here is the rate of new cases in selected countries. So this is cumulative confirmed cases by days since the 100th case. And it's a very messy chart here, I will admit. So there we have the top 10 countries there that the virus is affecting. And this has changed slightly as time's gone on. Obviously, Russia is coming up into that top 10 list now, which we hadn't seen previously, and expected to also obviously more than double its caseload in the coming weeks. But what you're seeing at the bottom there is actually most of the Asia-Pacific economies. So a lot of the Asia-Pacific economies have been very diligent and very aggressive at flattening the curve, and that really shows in the way in which a lot of the Asian countries here are bobbling along at the bottom in a good way. So in Asia-Pacific, it's less about the virus and more about the economic fallout from the lockdown and obviously the potential of a second wave relapse. So looking at a bit of what kind of goes into our modeling around the virus, there's essentially quite a big team in Asia in Global Data that actually looks at epidemiological patterns and all that, and they've been adjusting their forecasts for the crisis as time goes on. So we just put three large economies there, having different experiences with the virus. And obviously, it's actually adjusted the way in which we're viewing the impact and the length of lockdowns likely for a lot of these economies. So I guess that new model, the new data coming in is the red line, following closely what's the experience in that particular country has been. And what we're seeing is it's actually taking a lot, once you get over the hump, it takes a lot longer to actually tamp down all the way down on that virus. And that's kind of flowing into some of our modeling on the virus. And so there's little hope for eradication in most markets, but nor a rapid return to normal. So that's essentially what it tells us from this one. Now on to, unfortunately, the bad news, the gloom and doom, otherwise known as the economic context for the e-commerce market as well. So just looking at the first slide here in the economic section, it's really looking at the way in which COVID-19 has impacted the world economies. And as you can see, very dramatic, very red, unfortunately, in a lot of the indicators. So whether it's active jobs, a lot of those are down in the countries, in the top countries here. The market index, so the whatever benchmark stock market for that country, obviously down quite a bit. And then most, I guess, broadly speaking, the economic forecast for GDP in that year pretty much down across the board, barring just a little bit of hope in Asia's giants there for China and India. So even and this does take into account the economic stimuluses that we're seeing a lot of the governments around the world launch. This does anticipate that those are successful and that those get into play. But even with those packages, it's still remarkably red around the world. And so this really is our gloom and doom here. So only China and India among leading economies are expected to grow now, and that's a big change. So now looking at some of the market indicators that we look at. So major markets are improving, really. So we monitor a lot of the stock market indexes and a few indicators like crude oil, for instance. That gives us kind of a leading indicator as to where the markets are going. So really they're kind of in a holding pattern right now after a really rocky March. The March obviously saw a lot of drops in all the indicators, really, and a bit of a recovery though over the course of April as various markets have gotten to grips with the actual crisis itself, and really what we're looking at now is kind of the forward indicators suggesting when the economic recovery might happen. So yeah, global markets in a holding pattern, awaiting the reporting round for Q1. Some of that's already underway in the US and some of the leading countries in Europe. Elsewhere, a little bit slower, not up to the same degree. And the March employment and economic indicators really should play into a big shift on this one too. So what we really look at here is probably the oil price performance, which suggests a great deal of pessimism there. So looking at active jobs, I guess one of the interesting things about this economic crisis really has been how fast the employment picture has changed. So what we're seeing here is rapid growth in unemployment, never a good sign, and pretty widespread around the world. So the mounting unemployment, more than anything, is what's concerning us, as it has direct implications for the credit profile of the client base and just the general consumption around the market overall. So moving on to the final kind of consensus expects a global recession, essentially driven by that unemployment that we saw in the previous slide. So across the board, pretty grim on the quarterly numbers. And by extension, those GDP stats overall are looking pretty grim. There's still a great deal of variation in what we're expecting in terms of GDP, I will admit. So there's quite some possibility of truly horrific numbers coming through there. And I just wanted to highlight maybe Italy at the top there, negative 15% annual growth. I shouldn't even call it growth at that point, contraction. So that's pretty dramatic, and with the possibility of it being not so bad at 5.4%. So there's a considerable range there, and a lot of that is down to the fact that there's not a lot of modeling on what a second wave could look like, how that might impact things, and how fast it can actually open up, as it's taking longer than it has. So across the board, pretty grim, and by extension, those annual numbers are going to look pretty grim as well. So just to recap for the overall economic impact, a few things that we're looking at here. So just on that happy note there, let's move away from the gloomy context and look at something a little bit more cheery in the actual e-commerce impact. So next up, we're going to look at the large effects that the crisis is having on the e-commerce sector itself. And this is where we're going to get a little bit brighter. So growth in e-commerce has been dramatic, and it really is kind of a step change in terms of expanding the market. So what we're seeing here is a tracking of 20 countries and their e-commerce markets. So we've taken into account the impact the crisis is going to have on those markets in this year, and so that's why we've revised up our growth rate for 2020. So a growth rate for e-commerce across those 20 markets that I'm talking about here of almost 20%, which the e-commerce market has grown quite a bit in the past. But that's pretty dramatic given how large the market is already now. So in 2019, $3.5 trillion really done through the market. Getting into the fours as of 2020, $4.2 trillion expected to be done by the e-commerce market. Pretty impressive. That's just in those 20 countries, I just want to stress. So it's obviously larger in others. But that's really reversed kind of like a steady downward trend in terms of the growth of the e-commerce market. As the market's obviously gotten bigger, more mature, it's been harder to grow at the same impressive rates that we'd seen previously. So it may not seem as like a lot of extra business is being done, but you need to look at where we're expecting the growth to be at all. So we adjusted all of our country forecasts. So these are just some of the leading markets in that pool that we're looking at here. And as you can see, we have increased the expectation of growth, and it's been a permanent one. So there's no dip expected in terms of the value of the market in 2021 or later. So that's kind of an interesting one. But really, I mean, you look at this and you're like, well, that's not really that dramatic. But we had to examine what the actual impact of the virus has been on the e-commerce market and what the shape of the e-commerce market was pre-COVID, to get a good understanding of that. So just to recap, on average, we see an increase of total e-commerce of roughly 10% above what we were expecting in 2020. So that's 10% on top of the already pretty good growth that we were expecting. So that's just pretty important to note. Now, just looking at the absolute growth in e-commerce, the reason why we still say it's pretty striking is because if we look at the composition of e-commerce across the world, we have to note a few important things here. Travel was a huge part of the volume of money going through the e-commerce market. A lot of people, who doesn't get online, book a flight or book a hotel or something like that. Well, all that business in 2020 has pretty much gone up in smoke. So that's why when you kind of take that into account, that there has been a lot of negative impact by COVID-19 on the e-commerce market, or at least the volume of payments going through it. And that's the retail, particularly in electrical goods and in food and drink, has expanded to fill that and more than grow that market. That's where it's particularly striking, and that's why we're quite bullish on it. So the decimation of travel and tourism are one of the key reasons we see lower growth overall than we might see in some of the headlines in terms of the spikes for March and April that the press suggests. It, along with travel, along with clothing and footwear and such, account for a lot of the normal e-commerce. And so their collapse takes a lot of money out of the market. That will unfortunately be a bit slow to return as well. Just to look at one key aspect of the market is the travel side of things. So so there is expected to be a big contraction in terms of the amount of international tourists arriving across the globe, and that's really just one of the key reasons we're not seeing more dramatic growth in terms of e-commerce value in 2020. Conservatively speaking, it's expected to be a 20 to 30% collapse. So that's huge, and much greater than what had been the case in the SARS epidemic, as well as in the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So I just wanted to highlight how major the impact really is. So the key assumptions in these estimates here is that when the lockdown would end. So basically, it assumes still that there's going to be a relaxation in terms of the lockdown in international travel during 2020. So that could be highly dependent on the country, and is obviously a fluid target depending on how how countries globally are doing. A country could be doing great with the virus locally, but obviously might not want to open up to foreign impacts. So moving on to the impact of COVID-19 on the retail sector, which is another key one that we monitor. So we're just going to look at some of the China figures here. So that's really the look that we can have, because they've been so far along in terms of the virus. And so if we look at the first couple of months of the year for China in terms of retail sales growth, very, very negative for most of them. Where it wasn't negative at all was in the food and beverages and the medicine area. So we need to note that this is actually before an actual recession hit most of China. So particularly in the January time, it was very much locked down in specific areas, and it wasn't extended to the entire country. So that's just a key note of warning. So the economy is only partially shut in most of the country for a lot of this period. In terms of the actual kind of payments going through the e-commerce market, this is one of the key things that we like to monitor. Obviously, there's going to be a big boost in terms of the use of cards and the use of mobile payments for the overall payment mix around the economy, as that's the main way in which people are paying for their purchases. So overall, there is expected to be quite some innovation in the way people buy things, and many are going to be turning to the digital kind of options in this crisis. So looking at the next slide, why we're confident that a lot of the increase that we're going to see in 2020 is not going to be taken away from the market in 2021. Is because when we look at the barriers to e-commerce among internet users, so these are people already comfortable using the internet for communications and such, and what we really see there is that they just prefer to be doing something in store, or that they're concerned about fraud. I'll get to the fraud one first. So the fraud one is probably the easiest one for, or the most addressable one for sites and people involved in the payment side of things. Obviously, that's a concern. There's a lot more fraud activity out there, and phishing and all these kind of things that go along with it. But there's a lot of great software packages out there that address a lot of this. So obviously, investing heavily in that side of things is what's really going to ensure that none of your new customers that come into the market due to the lockdown are going to have a bad experience by having fraud done on their account. The preference to see what they want and to purchase it in store, that's another thing that we kind of view as just I'm used to not buying it online, so I'll buy it in the store still. Well, they're now going to become used to buying it, through an e-commerce channel. So that's going to be a lot of that same kind of inertia will keep them in the e-commerce market, actually. So ensuring that boost to e-commerce is enduring will mean attention to fraud, of course. But the more that can be done here, the better for long-term growth in terms of digital commerce in general. So thanks. I hope you found that informative, and I'm happy to take any questions later.
Thank you very much, Andrew. The global e-commerce really took a downturn, but that's an optimistic forecast. I think I was able to take some 3 notes from your presentation. Travel and tourism struck the growth of the industry. Consumer demands have shifted from non-essential to essential goods. Food and beverages are up. Clothing and apparel, they're down. While we enable the digital commerce, we have to pay more attention on fraud management and cybersecurity. Thank you, Andrew.
Absolutely. Thank you.
From a global perspective, this time, let's have a look at the local e-commerce space. Our second keynote presenter has an extensive 15 years of telecommunication and ICT experience. She headed groups handling banking and finance and business process outsourcing. Now, she heads the Infotech, OTT Contents, e-commerce, and media group of PLDT Enterprise. She will be sharing insights on the local e-commerce industry and how vital is the role of technology as we mitigate the negative impact of this pandemic and the preparedness to new normal. Corporate Relationship Management Head of PLDT Enterprise, Ms. Kay Bondoc de la Cruz. Hi, Kay. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in with us today. And Andrew, thank you for your very insightful presentation. Okay, just to set the stage, a little bit of a background taken from the Digital 2020 report of Simon Kemp. Okay, at the beginning of the year, the Philippines already have about 73 million internet users, and our internet penetration stood at about 67%. The digital population mostly belonged to the age group of 16 years old and above. And if we look further into this data, there are already about 173 million mobile connections in the Philippines, which is already an increase of 38 million from the same period last year. The number of mobile connections was also equivalent to approximately 159%, which means that an individual user may own multiple devices connecting to the internet. Okay, this one is important to note though. The average daily time spent of an average Filipino user before the COVID-19 pandemic is at about 9 to 10 hours a day. But since the start of the enhanced community quarantine, where approximately 68% of the population are mostly at home, the average time spent of an individual have increased to about 14 to 16 hours a day. Okay, let's take a look at how this current pandemic is now influencing the behavior of our consumers. Okay, we've had several discussions with some companies and service delivery providers and the other sub-industries of the e-commerce, and we have come up with the following trends. Okay, first, due to the virus scare, it was almost automatic for the consumers to self-isolate. So this led to the massive demand for online purchases and door-to-door delivery services to fulfill their basic needs. And if we talk about the consumer spending, some changes are actually due to non-essential services being curtailed or shut down. I know that everybody here needs a haircut, just like me and probably you, Andrew. And all the wives out there are somehow turning into barbers of their husbands, right? But customers won't be spending on this area until the services are back up again. Okay, another important note to see on the consumer spending side. Consumers are now not buying the products that are perceived to be unnecessary or non-essentials. There's the shift in budget allocations because, for instance, restaurants have had decreased the sales, but rise in home cooking increased food purchases at grocery stores as well as via the online and delivery services. If we look at the entertainment spending, it posted declines because of the closure of the malls or the events places and other theaters, but spending in in-home entertainment such as the Netflix or online gaming and the likes have actually increased. Digital payments, once born out of convenience, have now become a necessity for many. Also noted is the increase in cashless transactions during the start of the pandemic, leading to approximately 40% growth. And lastly, travel restrictions all over the world, I think this is also mentioned by Andrew, is also driving hyper-localism. We all saw and felt the rise of more local brands as well as the increase in direct communications between the manufacturers and the end customers. So aside from the lower costs due to the lower margins, we now have more exposure to various products from the local market. Okay, let's relate the changes in the consumer behavior to actual trends posted by sub-industries in the e-commerce. Okay, while we know that there are segments in e-commerce like real estate, sharing services, and the likes that are declining, we still have to celebrate the fact that overall e-commerce is posting a little bit of growth, at least in the Philippines. Since most brick and mortar retailers are forced to close their doors to the public, the estimated overall demand in e-commerce or online purchases specific to essential goods and services soared to about 20-30% year on year. This rating has actually outperformed the 2019 holiday shopping season in Manila. Ride-hailing apps such as Grab and Angkas, if we take a look at them, although they are forced to temporarily suspend their ride-sharing services, and they have shifted their drivers to door-to-door delivery services, the demand still provided their drivers more than 40% of their usual income. Our new player, Joyride, also stated that their driver bookings rose to almost 3,000%. Other service delivery providers like MyKuya, Lalamove, and the others reported a minimum of 500% increase in bookings, mainly servicing groceries and food requests. And of course, we have our small and medium establishments whose biggest concern is how to compensate for the lost in-store revenues who are moving their services and products online. There have been reports that new signups have posted Shopify about 41% in growth, and Lazada also cited 15 times more increase in demand for essential goods. There's also 30% surge in mobile payments with Lazada Wallet. Okay, now here's an interesting topic. This is actually brought about by our previous discussions with different groups surrounding the industry in the past weeks. During the start of the lockdown, a lot of retailers and micro business owners have started to move their stores immediately online, mostly through the different social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or Viber groups. And these transactions are mostly done manually. Hence the birth of the term, so this is not official, but we are putting in a term for now, it's called mano commerce. So amongst all the industries affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, they say that the e-commerce industry is ahead in the digital transformation game. But we could actually look at this in two slices. First is the existing big players who have been in the industry for quite a long time with enough knowledge and resources to run an e-commerce business. And then we'll look at the small and medium enterprises who are now in urgent need to shift and move their e-commerce game to keep their businesses afloat. So I know you know when we say mano, it's called mano-mano or manual commerce. So allow me to share some technology highlights and related insights to help a lot of businesses augment their e-commerce operations, and more importantly, those who needed to be in the e-commerce space yesterday. Okay, in this slide, in its simplest form, consumers perceive e-commerce ecosystem as merely looking, paying, receiving, and choosing their purchased goods and services. But we all know that it's not as simple as that. What goes behind this is an entirely different story. It's actually a network of interconnected functions that comprise the full cycle of the buying and selling of goods and services electronically and competently. Next slide, please. We are not going through the whole process of the e-commerce system, but allow me to highlight a few insights as we prepare for the new normal. We know for sure that this pandemic has given birth to consumer habits that will be retained, so the demand is not going to be temporary. Being in the game is one thing, but staying is another. Okay, so let's have a chat about the integration or the omni-channel, as well as data privacy and cybersecurity, and lastly about the intellectual capital. Okay, when we talk about integration, how important is integration for an e-commerce business? It is vital to note the difference of having a multi-channel and an omni-channel reality. So when we talk about multi-channel, the focus is the brand. So the main goal is to convey a brand information to as much audience and as much available channels as possible. Omni-channel, on the other hand, focuses on the customer experience, with each channel adapting around the customer's behavior and integrating the responses to advance the customer experience. In terms of technology, we can actually define what is needed now and what can be done as we move forward this integration. So the main goal of the integration is to have a 360-degree view of the customer. So everything starts with setting up. So now people are setting up in multiple channels to convey the information to the customers, but it might be a challenge to many, especially to those who are used to the brick and mortar shopping, but this is actually the most achievable stage to complete. Most companies, though, get stuck at this stage because the next stage is what we deem as the most important. This is where all the integration happens. So when technology comes in, we use tools such as CRM, knowledge management systems, and the likes. And that's when we are able to integrate all the data. And then as you move forward and as you settle in, then we can talk about refinement through big data analytics and IoT and integrate everything into a system. Next is at the center of increasing the e-commerce traffic. It is very important to have the consumer trust. Customers always have this fear that their personal data can be misused or shared with unauthorized entities. And actually, this is the main reason why before the pandemic, where everybody's forced to do online shopping, a lot of online users in the Philippines still prefer cash on delivery. Now that most people have tried or have been considering to move to digital payment transactions, how can we assure them that their data is secure? So we have lined up a few of the important insights for consumer data privacy and as well as for the security and fraud management. First is transparency in marketing. We should let the customers know where and how their personal information will be used. And we have to be specific in the privacy policy as well as with implementing them. Collaboration tools should also be compliant to the data privacy regulations by design. And it should be backed up by policies and processes fully aligned to the principles of data privacy. When we talk about security and fraud management, this should actually now become the industry's priority in terms of technology. Employing security solutions with the ability to predict, detect, prevent, and respond should be the end goal of every businesses who are bringing their customers' data online. While considerable progress has been made by many in the e-commerce space, we know that the challenges posed by cybersecurity is still a lot. But it's apparent that there's still much work to be done, and it should be a plan of many to design and implement the stages of cybersecurity and fraud management, be it in phases, but there has to be an end goal in mind. This is the third insight that I have for technology. In this slide, we will talk about the need for intellectual and human capital. So if we want to remain competitive in the e-commerce field, AI and big data analytics should be in our pipelines. As we all know, the chatbot services, analyzing customer responses, and behavior to generate a targeted selling approach are all significant in making the customers happy, and that will eventually lead to brand loyalty. But of course, we should never neglect that AI or artificial intelligence should always be tied with human empathy and decision-making abilities. And with the rise of all these technology and trends, we should never forget to prioritize, upskill, and reskill our people to sustain continuous growth. I know this has been the topic of many forums in the past, whether AI is going to replace the human employees, but I say that it's actually going to augment your workforce. But reskilling and upskilling should be given priorities. Okay, to close our discussion, in a pandemic characterized by extreme uncertainty, we should ride on one of the best traits of the Filipino people, and I say it's resiliency. We couple it with adaptability to change and a positive outlook in life that can certainly help us move forward and conform to the new normal. And we can all do this together. Yan, maraming salamat po and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Kay. We see a thriving local e-commerce with the right technology in place. I like how your last two slides. It talks about something that matters most in this health crisis. It's the people that works within the e-commerce ecosystem. It's the people or consumers like us who value customer experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie.
Again, thank you for our keynote speakers. Those were highly valuable insights. Now let's move on to the next part of the program. At this point, I would like to introduce our esteemed roster of panelists who are also live with us this afternoon. They will be joining in today's insight sharing. Our first insight share is from the company that prides itself in transforming ideas into companies. This is called Machine Ventures. Under Machine, he started MyKuya, a super app hiring services on demand with the goal of creating 1 million job opportunities in the Philippines by 2022. He also founded Hey Kuya, an SMS-based personal assistance service that was acquired just 6 months after its launch, making it the fastest technology acquisition event in the country. After starting his first venture in music distribution by the age of 13, he also started Tarafdari, Iran's leading sports media social network with more than 5 million monthly visitors. He was also recently selected as one of Asia's most influential entrepreneurs under 30 by Forbes magazine. Let us all welcome the co-founder and chief executive officer of Machine Ventures, or MyKuya, Mr. Shahab Shabibi. Hello, Shahab. Good afternoon.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. It's an honor, and I'm glad to be able to share my insights about the statistics that you were sharing.
Thank you, Shahab. May we hear your insights? Unfortunately, we can't have you on screen, but we are hearing you loudly. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I think, when you look at the data and the insights about e-commerce, I mean, those are facts. But I think, one important thing to consider is that seeing the true depth of the impact of the pandemic is something that, yet is evolving actively. And for example, when we, started to face the quarantine, overnight we saw a very sharp increase in demand for grocery delivery services in our application. And in fact, we had overnight, disappearing demand for pretty much every other vertical that our services marketplace was covering. And during the pandemic and during this quarantine period, 80% of the demand has been for grocery deliveries in our application. What's also worth mentioning is that we saw a 700% increase in demand for services and for the solutions that we were providing. And at the same time, we saw that initially and in the beginning, when sort of the work was, the quarantine had started, initially, we saw the surge in demand, but a few days after, and actually more recently, we are now seeing a surge in people looking for jobs and companies looking for ways to optimize their cash flow to actually generate income. So we are seeing sort of the waves after waves and the impact that it delivers. Another thing worth mentioning is that, sort of in the first wave, we saw demand increasing. Second wave, we saw supply increasing. But also more recently, we have seen the impact of the pandemic on traditional retail. And interestingly enough, the major retailers in the Philippines, they were quite quick to react. And in the coming days, MyKuya will be launching an initiative to enable traditional retail to bring traffic into its physical locations and take advantage of the advantages, take advantage of the traditional retail, which is having many brands under one roof, having the inventory and everything sort of available. And MyKuya will be working with the retailers to enable instant commerce and pretty much getting the things delivered instantaneously through our application.
Remarkable, Shahab. Thank you very much. We are actually excited to hear more of success stories of MyKuya and how you are helping and enabling Filipinos get more jobs via your platform. Thank you. For our second reactor, he was born in Madrid, Spain, and graduated with a double degree in business administration and finance from University Carlos III de Madrid. He was previously in the consulting industry for 5 years in Europe and South America, covering strategy, mergers, and acquisition projects. He came on board Lazada in 2014, where he started in the Malaysia office before taking on his current role with Lazada Philippines. As the Chief Operating Officer, he is in charge of overall platform traffic, category management, and seller acquisition and engagement. Let us all welcome on screen Mr. Carlos Barrera, Country Chief Operating Officer of Lazada Philippines. Hello, Carlos.
Hello, Jackie. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to share with you, and I hope we can all have a face-to-face after this. To be honest, it's a very exciting time for us. It's a challenging situation for sure, but we see it as an opportunity to serve the country and to really offer the needs, to really be able to provide Filipinos the capacity to shop from home, to buy from the safety of their house. No? So today, when we look at the market, it has been evolving dramatically. We've seen almost more changes just within the last 2 months than in the previous 2 years. And we've been doing our best to adapt to the situation. We saw an initial demand when it comes to essential goods up to 15 times higher. And we've been working very closely with DTI to capitalize this opportunity, to make sure that we slowly expanded the list of categories that were allowed, that we could actually service. We used at the beginning our last mile business to serve the needs of Filipinos. It's a convenience play. It's really focusing on the essential goods, mostly groceries, and creating large baskets. But then we also launched, you were mentioning earlier, we doubled down on our digital capabilities. So we launched a lot of activities related with our top-ups, payments, Lazada Wallet, and digital donation. So we want people to be able to donate from home. We did a lot of dedicated initiatives on digital giving. We onboarded more than 30 NGOs, and we really tried to get all Filipinos to be able to do the things that they want to do from home. We've been seeing very good development also for our MSMEs. It's important to remember that, yes, Lazada has a lot of the brands, most of the brands that you can purchase, but we're mostly an MSME type of company. And we see that small companies are really the lifeblood of the country. We've been working on helping them. In fact, we launched a bounce back package, a special program to really help all these companies get through this situation. We had more than 100 million pesos worth of different initiatives, different support to get these sellers to fast track and to leverage the opportunity. And as of now, we're very encouraged to say that the immense majority of our sellers are back. More than 90% of them are already operating. They're able to grow their business. And in fact, our sales are significantly higher than what we were seeing pre-COVID. So this is also a bit of a sign of hope, a way to show the strength of those companies that are digitalizing. And we have very big hope to continue growing. We see demand to continue selling on Lazada. A lot of new sellers joining the platform, but we also want to make sure that we keep the right environment. So we're focusing a lot on our safety of our deliveries, safety of end-to-end process, riders and customers. We have very strict hygiene measures now, from disinfection to all the best practices for our riders, all the masks and disinfectants, and of course physical distancing. And especially for a forum like this, where we're talking a lot about technology, this was very important. During a situation like this, it's also the time to go back to your core, to invest heavily. We really tackled a lot of technological improvements. We've been using a lot of live stream, Lazada Live. We launched special Lazada games, as now people have more time to stay at home and to play games. And we also revamped significantly a lot of our seller tools, to make sure that, for example, we have a different supply chain. They can sell fresh and frozen products. So really end-to-end innovation and preparing for this new normal. We're starting to see good recovery, and we're very excited to continue tackling all the improvements and to support the community.
Thank you, Carlos. A lot of things happening in Lazada, and thank you very much for giving Filipinos millions of choices in your platform. Thank you. Our third insight share is from an app we are all very familiar with, and we all get to use most definitely, this ECQ. She has been in the shared economy space for almost 5 years, transferred to Grab post-Uber acquisition to double down on driver quality, safety, and reliability. After pushing forward with these initiatives, she then moved to head Grab Express. Soon after, she also kickstarts initiatives on supporting social sellers through Madiscarting Boss Club. Ladies and gentlemen, the head of Grab Express Philippines, Miss Jack Lim. Hello,
Hi,
Jack.
Jackie.
Hi,
Hello.
hi there. Good afternoon. May we hear from you, please?
For sure. Those are actually very, very interesting insights. Similar to what the other panelists have mentioned, we've seen a shift in terms of how people are using the platform. I know that Miss Kay mentioned a while ago that Grab was first known to be a ride-sharing app, which was probably majority of our business at the time before COVID, right? But as we entered this pandemic where new normal kicks in, Grab becomes a tool to give people a sense of normalcy, right? Getting your essential goods from your favorite store, making sure that you send care packages to your family, ordering food when you can't prepare your own meals, even loading up your mobile phones or paying your bills. All these services became available in the Grab app. We've also seen a huge uptick in people actually not wanting to go out. Self-isolation indeed is happening. A lot of people are trying to do pabili service, which is a new product we've relaunched in cities, wherein you ask the drivers to purchase items for you. But more than all of these things, I think Grab is also very focused in helping these SMEs because we know that they have been gravely affected by the pandemic. A lot of them, especially those not selling non-essential items, are starting to find other ways. They've pivoted to more essential goods, and they need ways to get items to their buyers because we see more and more people, our demand increased by 3-4x over ECQ, right? We've seen more people wanting their items online and wanting it now, right? And that's the service that Grab tries to provide. And we give our MSMEs rebates, special promotions. We give them exclusive products that allow them to use our platform and our services properly. Lastly, I think similar to what Lazada has mentioned, that we are continuously supporting them and bouncing back and helping them grow the business. Recently, we've started providing visibility or discoverability on their own websites, and at the same time, we are offering micro loans for these MSMEs to help them kickstart their business post ECQ. Yeah, that's all from myself.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you to Grab for helping a lot our MSMEs. They really need that support right now. Thank you. All right. So for our fourth reactor, he is a full-time technopreneur and a full-stack programmer by heart. He founded Multisys Technologies Corporation, the leading software solutions company in the Philippines that blazes the trail across the IT, government, healthcare, utilities, hospitality, retail banking, and the finance industries. It is considered as the country's most important technology provider, with its platforms being used by more than 2,500 entities from the public and private sectors. Multisys is the developer of the online community-driven platform StaySafe.ph, a free COVID-19 mitigation system with heat mapping, advanced contact tracing, health condition reporting, and social distancing features. It is currently being used by the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases, National Task Force Against COVID-19, LGUs, and our frontliners. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Executive Officer of Multisys Technologies Corporation, Mr. David Almirol. How are you this afternoon, Sir David?
Hi, good afternoon. Okay. Allow me first to thank Andrew, Kay, and the PLDT Enterprise for such insightful presentation. I am particularly drawn about the opportunities for the e-commerce despite of the overall economic turndowns for most markets. By and large, I would say that this applies to the tech-enabled industries like Lazada, MyKuya, GrabExpress, and any other tech-enabled industries. This also validates the fact that more people are now online, as Kay mentioned a while ago, that internet connection is now a necessity. It will no longer be just an option, right? So e-business, e-commerce, entertainment, digital payments, online shopping, online games, including e-business and e-services, are radically transforming the business landscape, reshaping the nature of work, services like operations, even promotions, logistics, and even the boundaries and responsibilities of various enterprises. And the current health crisis that changed the game, further taking things into new heights. When the enhanced community quarantine was enforced and mass public transport has been suspended, this has resulted to some panic buying in the supermarket, anxiety, fear, for some to go out and buy their goods and supplies, right? And subsequently, many have turned to doing their shopping online to their convenience and safety as well. Almost everyone is practically online now, and transactions are settled electronically. Actually, before the pandemic, like in Multisys, there were more resisting companies who refused to go into digital transformation, and most of them, they refused or delayed their adoption of any available digital solutions. But because of the health crisis and physical distancing, and especially in this ECQ, that it brought, that had made more and more companies realize that the importance of digital systems and online services are not just an option. This will become now a mandate to them, for them to operate. Actually, at Multisys alone, Jacqueline, more and more companies and public entities are now approaching us to do system design and development services that smoothly expedite various processes and transportation. So as well as integrations. Digital technologies will actually help them to be more efficient. Of course, they would like also to save some cost, lesser human error, and improve their business long term. So I also totally agree that this is our new norm now, and we've seen businesses ramping up their digital transformation efforts to cater to this new normal. I am certain that IT and software solutions providers like Multisys and other tech company that we will be more busy now to enable and equip various industries in this new norm. To cough up, Jacqueline, we see a bright future ahead when it comes to digital transformation of the country. The Philippines may be lagging behind for now, but we are catching up at an unprecedented steering rate because of the health crisis. That is my personal insight, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir David. I couldn't agree more. Technology really helps a lot. Congratulations in advance to Multisys. All right, so we're just halfway through, actually more than halfway of our program, and we're getting a lot already from the speakers. At this point, we will now move on to the question and answer segment.
Key in your questions, comments, and suggestions via the chat.
Our first question is for Mr. Shahab of My Kuya. We know of My Kuya as a super app for on-demand help services, assistance, deliveries, and digital support. How did this pandemic change My Kuya's operation and customer service on a daily basis? And will these changes affect how you will conduct business after the ECQ has been lifted? Shahab, may we hear from you, please?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Yes, perfect. Yeah. So actually, since the quarantine began, we had to, shift our operations. And actually, since the day one of the quarantine, we have been working double shift 7 days a week to kind of take in the additional demands and the surge in demand that's coming through. It's also very much aligned with our mission of creating job opportunities, and it's very clear that now we need it more than ever. We also started to see, new industries and new areas of impact because of the quarantine and because of the pandemic. And we started sort of rolling out some collaborations with brands, with retailers in enabling, their presence in the digital world and ultimately ability to, buy and sell, buy goods and services, instantly and online. Also, we started seeing, additional types of businesses being very much affected due to the cash crunch and their revenues, kind of being affected. And they have kind of started coming to us in terms of offering their services through our digital marketplace. And what we have done is that, our entire operations is 100% remotely operational, and we are able to, work double shift and be able to not just take in the job seekers that kind of need income opportunities, but also empower businesses that need to, be able to sell their products and services at times like this, and ultimately deliver them to the end users with much more intensity compared to before.
Thank you, Shahab. We see that you've fitted your operation based from the current demands and how is it going to be after this ECQ. Thank you, Shahab. For our next question, yes, we'd like to pass this on to Carlos from Lazada. During this pandemic, consumer demands have shifted from essential to non-essential supplies. What are some of the operational transformation which Lazada has been through? And future forward, will you be looking at implementing some automation, AI, or robotics to complement some of your workforce functions?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, actually, innovation is part of our DNA. So we're constantly trying to improve. And we've been doing all types of improvements, both throughout the crisis and then even before this COVID crisis, to be honest, because we have the learnings from Alibaba, our parent company in China. We've been automating quite a few processes from the customer side, on-site, and app features. When you open the app, it's not the same for any of us. It's all automated, and it really distinguishes what type of customer you are. If you're a wallet customer, if you are more of a fashion customer, your gender, your patterns. So I think this is one of the key measures. We've also been running a lot of innovation and especially automating how we engage with our customers. We've launched our live streams to get people to interact differently with the app. Several games, like I mentioned earlier, also flash sales. So really a lot of innovation on the customer side. But I think what is important here is to also innovate when it comes to sellers. So we've been innovating our operations a lot, especially in terms of preparing the set of categories that they can serve, adjusting our supply chain, allowing fresh products, allowing sellers to sell easily. For example, when we have been opening more categories, as DTI allowed office supplies, then they allowed hardware categories, we had to really be quick to adjust our supply, to adjust our logistics. And this is one of the parts that is hard to run during a situation like this. I think Shahab mentioned very clearly, we need to be very grateful to our frontliners, because really our logistics team is constantly exposed. So we had to automate a lot of the things, especially on the pickup side, to make sure that they minimize the exposure. Some of the technology innovations we've been doing have a lot to do, not just to supplement workforce, but to improve efficiency. For example, when you order a Lazada item, it goes automatically into a sorting center that has the capacity to read the scanning codes and sort by location. So even the warehouses have, I'm sure you've seen the famous robots in China that they just automatically see the picking locations. Now, something that is very important for me and I want to share is, this is not to replace people. It's a way to supplement. I think the question is very good, is to supplement. We're actually growing, and even throughout the entire crisis, we've been hiring. What we see is that the more efficient we are, the more jobs we create, the more value for the ecosystem. So we need to think about technology and innovation as a positive thing. If you notice everything I've been discussing, it's to make buyers more engaged, it's to make sellers more efficient, to help driving more business, and we're actually growing. So I hope it's not that people don't take this question as a way to outsource jobs or to reduce the workforce. It's actually the opposite. This is an enabler to get more people to do a better job and to grow faster and employ more people.
I commend how Lazada takes care of their people while doing innovation. Thank you, Carlos. For our third question, this is for Grab. Jack, you have Grab Express, Grab Food, Grab Mart, basically almost all services that help Filipino households and essential businesses carry on during the ECQ. As an organization, what are your key learnings or insights on consumer behavior in this pandemic, and how is Grab able to swiftly adjust to meet the demands of both your driver riders, partners, and the consumers?
I guess I start off by, you mentioned it right? It's super spot on, Jackie, that we have different services and Grab aims to be an everyday everything app. I think when we entered into this pandemic in the Philippines, there were a few key challenges that Grab need to address and try to find ways on how we can solve them. Some of which will be like doubling down on safety, right? Carlos pointed it out really well. Our logistics partners, our riders are constantly exposed to people. And we want to be able to deliver goods safely to the consumers. Grab, like the moment this ECQ or even before ECQ, we've started implementing different policies like social distancing. If you open your Grab app, you book a Grab Express or a Grab food delivery, you will actually see a graphic saying that you stay 2 meters away from your driver. We have encouraged people to do cashless and actually just leave the item there. Other than that, we've also done temperature checks. So our riders are required to actually submit temperature every single day to make sure that they're healthy and safe on the road, and we are able to help them in case they need anything. Grab has also distributed face masks, bottles of alcohol. We have given it's more sanitary essentials for people. And we continuously work with the government in terms of safety. Think about it as Grab as a platform is able to help with robust contact tracing, right? If a person is exposed to COVID, orders something, sana naman wag, right? But we're able to trace every single person it interacted with through our platform. And at the same time, in case any of our riders, I hope not, encounters it, we are also ready to provide financial assistance because these guys are our partners and we want to keep them safe. I think the second thing we have to focus on is their livelihood. you've mentioned we have different services, and everyone knows that GrabCar was suspended. That left thousands of Filipinos jobless, which is why I think when this entire thing started, Grab did a few things to try to help them out. The first one is these guys are partners. They run their own business, they drive at their own convenience, and some of them took out loans from Grab through our Grab Financial Solutions. We've actually deferred the payments of all these pre-qualified and pre-distributed loans, and we've offered emergency loans also during the enhanced community quarantine. Aside from that, we tried to look for our drivers who had motorbikes, had bicycles, and we have successfully onboarded more than 4,000 of these drivers who were jobless day one of ECQ into our Grab Food and Grab Express and Grab Mart delivery platform, allowing them to have an alternate source of income. And we continue to partner with various organizations to enable our business, but at the same time, give livelihood to these people. We've also worked with the government. Like, I think you guys know about the DSWD financial support, the DTI. Like, we work with DTI, we work with all these various segments to make sure that our drivers are well supported throughout the pandemic. And we've also given something from us. We've actually managed to give, I think, 270,000 kilos of rice and 164,000 like assorted canned goods, bottled beverages, and we've distributed these to partners. So medicine, rice, all these things. These are the things we're doing like silently, and like I'm proud to say that we've successfully distributed a lot of it. But aside from helping our drivers, I think the thing with Grab, kasi it's a multiple-sided marketplace. There's so many people involved in every single transaction. The last one is like helping our kababayans. I think helping our kababayans is different for each individual. For example, the most affected by the pandemic are the senior citizens, the PWDs. They can't go out. They need normalcy in their life. They need their supplies. They need their medicine. Actually, one of our biggest item or like biggest pabili ask is going to the drugstore to buy maintenance drugs, right? These are very important to our kababayans. And lastly, launching GrabMart. Like launching GrabMart makes essentials more available. We've launched our services in more cities. So Manila, most people, kasi we're Manila focused eh. We've launched our services into Iloilo, Davao, Pampanga, Bacolod, all during ECQ. We had to hustle to make our services available, do virtual onboarding, teaching the drivers how to learn how to use the app virtually without a physical team able to train them, right? And distributing gears to their houses. These are all very challenging. And I guess the last one is like anchoring on the MSME parts. Madiscarting Boss Club was launched to support MSME. And during this pandemic, we have continuously tried to help them. We have given them advertising. So we normally charge if we put your product on our website or our app, but right now we're actually featuring some of the MSMEs in our Grab app. If you open it today, you will see Mother's Day Essentials. These are online sellers, part of our club, and we're giving them free ads per se to push their business forward on top of the delivery services, the loans, and the different business solutions we provide. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. So I got partnership, safety, and collaboration, livelihood, and reaching as many consumers as you can. Thank you very much. Okay, for our fourth question, we'd like to ask Kay from PLDT Enterprise.
Yep.
Kay, please share with us how PLDT is enabling e-commerce companies, large and small, in their transformation towards a more agile and secure ecosystem.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay. Jack, I must say we are beyond merely providing just ICT and telecommunication solutions. No, we have been discussing this in the past days. I think what's more important to our clients, especially during this time of uncertainty, is actually finding a true partner in us. Because this new normal requires a lot of collaboration. I've been hearing a lot of collaboration and innovation from our panelists as well. So as well as customization. And we understand the need to address our customers exactly how they need to be supported, because it's different in one industry, in one sub-industry and all of that. But the important thing is there's partnership and collaboration. And of course, we wish to be with them from the start of their digital transformation, although many are saying that this pandemic is our forced teacher for the digital transformation. There are still a lot of clients or companies, whether small, medium, or large, with different degrees who need our help as a partner. And we'd like to define with them what is feasible for the company, as well as help them track their timelines based on their capabilities to expand. So, yun.
Thank you, Kay. It's really an end-to-end partnership program for PLDT. Thank you. Sir David, would like to ask this question for you. As we enter towards the new normal and Multisys being a technology solutions provider, what are the most on-demand platforms that the e-commerce players can leverage on in this pandemic? And any cybersecurity measures you can share that this industry need to strongly consider in anticipation of the growing digital or online transactions?
For Multisys, I think almost all industries, because as long as there's a tech-enabled technology. So the digital technologies, including e-commerce, are radically changing the business landscape now, reshaping the nature of work and as well as the boundaries and responsibilities of various enterprises. As for cybersecurity, we make sure that you keep and protect your platforms using secured server behind multiple security controls. And I like what Jack mentioned a while ago, that systems should be developed by cybersecurity and data privacy by design. So you have to do that. Do not do it right after you develop the platform, right? And I am sure most of the industries, whether public or private, will be moving into online services nowadays. I'm seeing a lot of movements in smart cities, e-government, e-businesses, e-technologies, e-services. Those solutions will become now a necessity. As I mentioned a while ago, they will no longer be just an option. And more and more companies realize its importance because of the restrictions brought by the enforced ECQ. I think we don't have much choice, right? Plus the fact that we need to protect our people, ourselves, and our customers. So like Grab is doing, Lazada is doing, because you have to consider not only to do business, but you have to take care also of your people. You have to find that concept. Having said that, we can do so much in terms of shifting physical business to digital one by exploring online services. So there's a lot of opportunities, especially in the tech industry, like websites, mobile apps, online shopping, payments, digital wallets, online banking, e-learning, and even telehealth. So these even us, we're so busy now, and we're seeing a lot of projects. Quite shocked. Like everyone is like, I need a website, I need a mobile app. So it's quite amazing from our end, but of course we're not happy.
Sir David, I think we're having a little bit of a challenge in terms of your connection. But we hear you well, sir. We're taking note of all the things that you have mentioned, and I'm pretty sure you mentioned you are very busy nowadays, and the days will get more busier. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
For our sixth question, this is for Andrew of Global Data. During this pandemic, what are some of the transformation success stories you've witnessed so far, and any final guidance you can share for the Philippines or local e-commerce players?
I think the most probably striking around the world has been the kind of big shift in the grocery space. So a lot of supermarkets had a previously kind of small sideline in online shopping and at-home delivery, and that's had to ramp up. I don't know how many fold over the course of the quarantine period, and I think that's probably one of the most striking ones. In terms of like innovation as well, I think there's also a bit of the the partnership between the buy now pay later space and most notably Afterpay and Tencent, recently announced a couple days ago, I think. I think that really just shows that even like kind of leaders in the digital space are really still kind of trying to invest in improving their offerings. So offering a form of credit, even if consumers don't really see it as credit, that will become increasingly useful, I think, particularly in, unfortunately, the coming recession that we're gonna see around the world. So I think that's part of it.
Thank you, Andrew. I know we're running, we've extended beyond the allotted time, but I'd like to ask our last question to all of the panelists. What advice can you give to traditional brick and mortars, mom and pop stores looking to break into e-commerce? And do you believe this will be the new normal? Let's have Sir David.
For me, just go online, So you need to, this is now our new normal. So go online, don't be afraid of trying to use the internet, mobile apps, websites. So that's my advice. This is our new normal now. We are now living into a digital space. So that's it.
Thank you, Sir David. Jack?
I guess the biggest advice is don't be afraid to try something new and try to explore opportunities. You can always iterate. You can start by posting on social media, then partnering with an e-commerce player and logistics player. But the first step is always the hardest. And when you get there, you will continuously grow and take the benefits of this e-commerce transformation.
Thank you, Jack. Carlos, may we hear from you, please?
It's hard to be the third because I think David and Jack mentioned everything that I actually believe. To be honest, this is the biggest opportunity. You have companies like us that we're even losing money to grow this market. We are in the business of training people. We're investing very heavily to help them go through this. We are educating the market. We have all types of, Lazada University, of support chat, of dedicated agents that the only thing they do every day is to guide people to go online. Their only target of the year is to have more sellers selling online and to onboard more people into our platforms. So we are one digital community and we all work very closely with each other. And I really want to encourage everyone to take the step, to start testing exactly like what Jack was saying. It's much easier than what they think. And for any question, they can contact any of us because we will even refer them to each other to make sure that they can run a successful business.
Thank you, Carlos. Shahab, please.
Yeah, I think, it's important to see that the push to kind of go online was not something that kind of happened overnight. And the pandemic was merely a catalyst as we kind of have been seeing this coming. I think it's important that, you kind of rethink your entire supply chain because, just being online in one area of the business may not really be the solution to the problems that businesses are facing. And I think, my last comment would be on, understanding what are the channels in which you are making your services available and trying to kind of have a multi-channel approach because, depending on one way may not really be a very kind of safe approach in terms of ensuring business longevity. So that's my take. Yeah.
Thank you, Shahab. Andrew, please.
Sure. I think just from what I've seen in terms of case studies, keep it simple. Use one of the platforms where they already have a kind of a ready-made structure for you to follow to digitize some of your business or part portion of it, and just keep it simple and use their network effects to kind of get some business early on.
Thank you. And lastly, Kay, any advice?
Jackie, thank you. I must say that especially to those who are struggling to be in the e-commerce space, that we see you, we acknowledge that you are there, and that this is inevitable and definitely not temporary because, of course, we can no longer unlearn what this pandemic has taught us. But just keep moving forward. You define the goals, set the timelines, and just like what I said in my last slide, believe in your ability to be resilient and adapt. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you, Kay. On behalf of PLDT Enterprise, I am sincerely expressing my gratitude to our remarkable panelists, to our viewers who are tuned in. Thank you all for spending your time with us this afternoon. I'd like to end this session and pick up some lines from Jack Ma. He said, "For people in business, 2020 is just a year for staying alive. If you can stay alive, then you would have made a profit already. But let me add to that. Let's stay alive. And while doing so, stay alive with a purpose." This was hashtag One With You PLDT Enterprise Virtual Forum for the e-commerce industry. I am Jackie Ang. Good afternoon and stay safe.